So today we'll be talking about the most used element in any of the HTML project, and that is the div element. Any website that you see on the internet must contain a ton of div element. These are the most generic element of HTML. Div element can also be called as the building block of any web page. Now before talking any further, so let's create a div element to see how it behaves. Inside this body element only, we'll create an element called div, and as I told you, these are the most generic HTML element. You can put anything inside this, any text, any another element. So that is why this is most commonly used. But now let's write some content inside this element. Write example of div element. Save this. Now here you got the content. So div element. So what does div element do? It basically creates a box around the content that it contains. Now to see that box, let's inspect this page. We'll press that element. See, this is the box that div element creates around the content that it contains, and there is no other thing, just the box. Now by default, div element is an example of block element with reference to its display property. We have already seen this. The box that it creates goes throughout the page. It covers the entire line. Now let's put this entire thing that we have created earlier inside this div element only. Let's cut it from here and paste this inside this div element. Now see what happens. Nothing much happened except this line was earlier in a different line and now it is after this text box only. This is because we have not written this line inside any element. We have just put this inside this overall div element. So that is why it got printed after this text box. So let's do one thing. Let's put this inside a paragraph element only so that it appears on a different line. Perfect. Now save this. Now you can see this line got printed in a new line also. And now let's see the box that this div element created this time. So this is the box that this div element created. As you can see, it is covering the entire page because it's a block element by default. Let us do one thing. Let's add another div element of this exact structure. Copy this and paste this. Save this. Now you see this thing is printing right beneath this. You might have seen these kinds of structure in a lot of mobile application nowadays. Some popular social media apps like Instagram, you must have seen these kind of structure where new content with same structure but different content appears below one another. And let's do one thing. Let's change this image to a different image. I have generated one more image with AI. This one. Let's change this in our file from 35 to 43. Save this. Now see, let's remove this for a while. So now this structure looks a bit cool. Now div element does exactly that. Let's do one more thing. Let's change the styles of this image element also. It was image.css. Let's not give any height to it so that these empty space would vanish. Okay. Now change the border color to black. I think black is a default color, so I think we can remove this property. Okay. Now this is a structure what mobile follows. You might have also seen this structure in YouTube mobile only. There is a video, some description of the video, and the next video. And as you scroll down, you see multiple videos. But what happens in desktop mode is you do not see the next item right below the first item, but rather on the side of the first item, because in desktop mode there are many spaces around sides also. So for that, what we need to do is we need to put this entire content from here to here only. For doing exactly that, div element is very useful. So div element is basically, you can assume this div element as a container only, where you put different contents, like you have put a image, multiple text box, some statements. So this is just a container. At this point, container is containing this entire space. So we can change that by converting its display property. Since there are only two div elements in our HTML file, and we want both the div element to have the property of display inline block, so we do not even need to give them a class for now. We can directly target those elements by writing div. Notice we are not using dot here because it's not a class name, it's a name of an element only. Right display inline block. Save this. Now you can see they are appearing right next to one another. We can also give them a margin to the right margin, right 12 pixels. Fine. And as they are container, now you can make n number of such div containers, and all of them would appear next to each other until the line gets used up. Then they will start appearing on the next line. You can create one more element which will show up after this. For that, again copy this and paste it here. Save this. Now since there is not enough space after this element, so that's why the next div element appeared on the new line. If we make this a full screen, there will be plenty of space after this element also, so therefore this element will also appear in the same line also. Let's see this. See, you must have seen this behavior in almost all the websites that you see. As you decrease their width, the elements start shrinking and start to wrap up in a different line. Now let's inspect this to see the margin that we have given it. Not this element, this div element. See, this is the margin of 12 pixel. You can see this margin goes throughout this element because everything is contained inside this div element only. Border, and then this is the div elements box. So this was all about div element for now.